everyone. This is the first event of the spring semester, and I'm delighted to have this wonderful panel. Many thanks to the chapter president for making such a nice poster for the event. So I'm very much looking forward to this. And also, I'd like to emphasize our next event is going to be March 5th. We're going to have Dr. Mauricio Resende of Amazon. He's amazing. He'll be speaking on logistics and big data at Amazon and operations research, and you should not miss that as well. And we'll have others as well. So thank you for coming, and I'm very much looking forward to the panelists and the discussion.
Thank you, Professor. So yes, hello everyone, and welcome back to our UMassINFORMS speaker series. We are now at the end of the second week of the spring semester at UMass. I hope you have all had a great start. And today we have our first event in the spring semester, an academic job market panel. I just tried to do the introduction very quickly because we have just 1 hour and with 4 great panelists. So we have Dr. Priyank Arora from Isenberg School of Management at UMass Amherst. Dr. Deniz Besik from Robbins School of Business at University of Richmond, Dr. Chaitra Gopalappa from the College of Engineering at UMass Amherst, and Dr. Sara Saberi from Foisie School of Business at WPI. And they are all young faculty, so they can share their experience, advice from like both their time in job market and now as in their that they are in the search committees in their departments. And we have like 3 broad topics, which are how to be a top candidate in the academic job market, what to do before, during, and after the interview, and the possible effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the academic job market, especially the upcoming one. And before we start with the first panelist, I want to ask the participants to drop your questions in the chat box so the panelists can read them, answer them. We might have some time at the end, but I think it would be better to just have them during the discussion because the time is limited. And
I'd also like to welcome Dr. Monadeepa all the way from the United Kingdom. She's our newest faculty member to join our wonderful department. So this is very international.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey, so
Hi.
cool. Great. Amazing.
So yeah, that's it. And as you probably have noticed, the meeting is being recorded, then it will be edited and get approval from the panelists. And then finally it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, which you will be here from our social media. And that's it. Let's start with Professor Priyank Arora.
Thank you, Majtaba, and thank you, everyone. So I always prefer to use a slide aid, although there is nothing that I wanted to put there, but I'll use that, so bear with me, please. So today I want to share some of my thoughts on academic job search. And what I wanted to make sure was that I talk about things that are not brought out quite prominently in various panels that you might have attended, because some of the things will be quite common. You would already know what you need to do. So today I'll try to focus on things that I feel were that I learned because of my firsthand experience, and hopefully you'll benefit from that. Secondly, given that we all are from informs community, so I'm going to use a simple math model to talk about my things because I understand the world in math. So let's talk about your probability of success in job market. I can write a simple equation saying that it depends upon certain weight that is put on fixed effects, like where you joined, who you're working with, which department you are in. And these are things which are more like parameters. These are exogenous, not very much in your control. It is dependent on the market, how much weight they put on the reputation, how much weight they put on the pedigree. In that regard, you all are in a really high top-end program, so you need to not worry about this fact. The one that is under your control is probably the one where you can put some actions. And the things that I think matter the most to your probability of success are your research outcomes, which would be evident through papers, awards, even conference participations, chairing sessions, and so on. And the other thing that really matters, that complements this, is your efforts that you'll be putting in the job market. And these are your actions. These are under your control. This is what you can change from 0 to 1 scale to ensure that you are likely to get a good outcome from the job market. And what today I want to focus is on your efforts in the job market. So first of all, from this equation, what I want you to take away is that within the context of the bigger, mechanism that's going on, you have control over certain things. So you should try to take full charge of those things and stop worrying about other things which are not in your control. That's how your effort will be well spent. Then in efforts in job market, let me use the question that Mojtaba laid out before, during, and after interview. So I'll try to structure my inputs to you in that particular regard. So before, you can start doing many things actually quite long before the job market comes on your doorstep. You can start working on how do you even explain your research to someone in non-technical manner, in a more impactful manner. So if I ask you, what are you working on? Some of us as PhD students are quite inclined to talk about the technical result or the cool proposition that we proved. But when you go to job market to sell yourself, you have to identify yourself as someone who's tackling bigger questions, important questions. Where do you fit in the larger scheme of the literature that exists out there in the world? So you need to really practice talking about your research in a managerial or a practical manner, that I am working on this overarching question, which is quite important to the world and to the economy. And this is how I'm trying to tackle, or which niche I'm trying to tackle within that. And it's not something you develop overnight. You have to practice it. You have to start talking about your research to your friends, to your colleagues, to your advisors, to guest speakers who come visit you. Because this is something you master over time. You will fumble in the first few times, but eventually you will figure out that 1 minute elevator pitch or a 3-minute elevator pitch in which you are able to capture the attention of someone, and they might end up saying, can you share your paper with me? And that means you have now created that interest, which is very important, because in job market, you have to leave an impression that they want to know more about you. The second thing that I want to tell that you can do is participate in conferences, in presenting your work, or wherever you have a chance to go and take part and be noticed. Because by the time you reach the interview stage, you should be able to converse in a very confident manner, because people are looking for a colleague. They are not looking for another person to fill a room in their building. They want someone who can be considered as a colleague, someone who they are able to share their thoughts other than just work. So you need to present yourself as someone who's able to carry a conversation. So it has to be very free flowing. So you need to get out of that mode of being someone who's just a student. We all should be students forever, but what I mean is the sense where you might not be very comfortable and confident. So to reach that level, go out, put yourself in situations quite early on, so that by the time you're in job market, you have mastered the art of having conversation with a scholar in a very equal manner. You might not be equal, but you want to present a very confident foot there. Now, what is during the interview part, what I want to highlight is what I look for, what I kind of catch on very quickly in a candidate is how passionate are they? So, people can be working on similar ideas, similar topics, research question might be very similar, but the passion is very different from one candidate to the other. And that's what distinguishes you very clearly. And that passion has to come from the fact that you're working on a question that you really care about. So you have to make sure you choose the right things along the path, that you're able to talk about it in a very passionate manner, that how you feel about this topic, or you feel about research field, about academia in general. What you need to do is you need to be a little bit on a high energy mode during interview to convince the committee that you are really excited about this career and their institute. And how do you establish that? So my second suggestion to you would be, this might seem strategic, but I think it helps. You need to go read their profiles very thoroughly. You need to read about the school, their strategic plan, 10-year plan, dean's thoughts, department chair's thoughts about the department. To give you an example, I went through the resume of my future wherever I interviewed, and I picked on things like somebody had patented an ice cream scooper because they were very keen engineer. And during my conversation, I just brought up that, oh, I noticed you have an ice cream scoop patent. How did that interest come about? Or somebody had a lot of papers in retail, but one of the paper was in film making, and I brought that out in my conversation and said that, how did that fit in your research portfolio? So this just shows that you are able to have a conversation, you are able to show genuine interest in them, not just that you are there to sell yourself. So master this act of having a conversation that shows genuine interest, but in an intentional manner. So don't think you're faking it, you're just finding the right ways to convey it. Now, let me move on to after the interview, which is something I think once you go there, do the job talk, and you're like, I have done enough. But no, it still continues. The easiest thing that anyone can tell you is, oh, write thank you notes. Well, we all know that we should write thank you notes, but there is an art to it. So I think what you need to do is, I don't know if the flyouts will be happening or this will be happening in a very different way for those who are immediately going. But let's say you are flying back from your interview, use the airplane journey to write down all your notes, because memory, you have fresh conversation. Bring out something unique for everyone. Write an individual note to every person you met during that day. I wrote notes to even the doctoral students. I wrote notes even to the administrative staff. First, because I really wanted to thank them. They gave their time to me. Secondly, just think about it. If everyone is talking about you, it may not convert the decision of search committee, but it might propel it in the right direction. So you have to be that person who is genuinely a person that they want to hire. And the second thing I would say is, remember that you are in the job market. You are also going to be looking for the right fit. So be prepared to have a conversation about things that matter to you. So don't be a taker. To some extent, even bring out what you want to talk to them. So when an offer comes, let's say an offer comes from your second best school, write an email to the first best school saying that I heard this offer, but you are my top choice. What is it that, can I help you in moving along? So be a little bit more confident in your interactions with the search committee, because you're going to be a potential colleague and not a student there. So I know we all will share a lot of things, so I don't want to repeat things which many others might talk about. So I just will leave with two important things to keep in mind. If you are going to take away one thing from my entire speech, remember you are looking for the right fit. Do not settle for the first offer. Do not think that you will go there and find a way to make it feel happy. If you don't feel happy with that whole interview process, during the flyout, during your meetings, if you don't feel this is the place for you, it may not ever become that place for you, and you're going to move your entire family there. You're going to spend 6 years of your life there. You have to make sure you are finding the right fit. And that's why I show this, that dating and job hunting have a lot in common. And finally, it's a very tiring process. Be prepared. Find ways to rejuvenate yourself from one meeting to the other. What works for you? Meditation, reading something, going to the restroom, and just collecting yourself. Have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, you will get exhausted and it will show on your face, which is not a good signal to the potential employer, because for them, that's their first interaction with you. They don't care whether you had 30 other interviews. As a human being, they should care, but they will judge you on your passion and excitement and confidence. So have a plan. And finally, I would say that my 2 cents on COVID-19's impact, I think the impact would be more about the new forms and ways of interviewing. But from the regard of supply and demand, I feel that the schools are resilient, and there is so much demand for operations and supply chain given what the world has seen during pandemic. So don't worry about the quantity. Worry about how am I going to make an impression in online thing. teach online courses, because that will be one way to tell them that, hey, I'm ready to come there and teach online, because everybody wants that now given COVID-19. So I think I will let maybe Deniz talk more about the COVID-19 thing, because she went through that. So I'll stop here and we can continue the conversation on chat or offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. There is one question already in chat for you. And
actually, I think nowadays everybody would go for email notes, because that's probably the fastest. Speed matters. So write the notes immediately after. Don't think that I'll find a weekend to write them. No, speed is what matters in this kind of job market. Physical thank you notes, I think that could be an additional thing to do if that's what you do, but send out email notes so that they know right away what you wanted to convey.
thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. Now we can go with Dr. Deniz Besik as the second panelist.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. It's kind of difficult to follow up on Dr. Arora's amazing presentation, I guess. I'm not that prepared, but I think that was amazing, and mostly he covered, I think, a lot of things. I just wanted to, by the way, that presentation reminded me of Barabasi's Formula of Success. That book, if you haven't read it, I think it's kind of nice. I really enjoyed reading that, and that presentation, like Formula of Success, kind of reminded me of that. So I think overall, the questions that Mojtaba asked for the job market, and also Dr. Arora mentioned that, before, during, and after. I guess for before, I would say that, work on your research, I guess, teaching and service, which covers all the conferences and then the networking opportunities that you're gonna be having. And what I want to add is that maybe during the job market, which will start from applying to the positions, to the the interviews during the conference, and also hopefully the on-campus visit. But in the pandemic, like we don't know what's going to happen. So the whole job market is going to probably span over a year, I would say, maybe 6 months, or depending on where you start. But so before the job market, I would just suggest that apply everywhere. I applied to every position that I saw, and of course, depending on the location in the US, it would also matter. And during the interview, so you're gonna apply to those positions, and probably you're gonna have some interviews scheduled for the conferences, like at Informs or DSI, and the other conferences, and those interviews are gonna matter a lot. So, and it's going to be very tiring. So you're going to have like hopefully back-to-back interviews, and that is going to be tough. And you have to, be like, you need to perform, right? So you need to, oh, my Siri is acting, and you need to perform well. And the other thing that I want to add is that maybe during the campus visit. So Dr. Arora mentioned this, but again, like you have to show your enthusiasm, and you need to show that you really want this job. My current department chair at the University of Richmond, so I had an interview with him like at the end of the day. So after I gave the research presentation and after I met all the other faculty members, my last meeting was with the department chair. And he just asked me, like, why do you want this job? So this was his, his question. And also, who do you see as an example in your life that you want to follow, like kind of like a role model? Who is your role model? So these two questions were, last two questions coming from department chair, he was just, straight to the point, like, why do you want this? So make sure that you kind of have an answer to this kind of questions, because they, as Dr. Arora mentioned, they want someone who is driven, who is enthusiastic, who could be a good colleague. Apart from all these research papers, teaching experiences, they want someone that is driven, enthusiastic, and can take all the pressure of tenure track, basically, while also being a good colleague. And yeah, and then I just want to add, after the whole campus visit and everything, of course, the emails that you should be sending to all the faculty members. And I didn't send it to, I think I sent to one staff in one of the schools, but I didn't send to everyone, I guess. But I think what Dr. Arora mentioned was also great, that, you know, even the doctoral students, I guess, might have an influence on the decision. And also I heard that some people actually sent handwritten notes to the faculty members, just like after the interview. You can do that also. I guess it might have an influence on some people who care about, you know, receiving cards from people. And so I guess, I don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic during the job market these days, but I feel like there are still job opportunities, and I see a lot of positions coming up from other schools. And, you know, I see, you know, I think it's going to be maybe a little bit worse than previous years, but I think there will still be opportunities in our area of, especially in supply chains, as Dr. Arora mentioned, and business analytics. I think there's still a lot of demand for that in terms of you know, number of students. And so I think overall, it's going to be a tough year if you're going to be in the academic job market next year and maybe in the following years. And I think that it is definitely one of those experiences that you have to go through to really understand. But I think I feel like my main takeaway would be that you have to be mentally ready also, that, okay, you know, that I can do this, and then and it's going to be tiring as well. But also you have the power, right? So you have the choice, and, you know, after going through all of that, you should still have the power to choose what you really want to do in life. But overall, that's my takeaway, and my answers for those questions that Mushtaba asked.
Thank you, Deniz.
Yep.
And so now we can continue with the insights from Dr. Sawberry.
Okay, so I just have prepared one time some slides, for a few slides for the students who came to WPI as a STEM program that was for PhD students, to just see how is the STEM education at WPI. So I'm going to use those, but pretty most of them are covered by, have been covered by Priyank and Deniz. So it's going to be a little bit repeated, but just bear with me. I'm doing my best to just pass those things that is going to be just repeated again and again. So hopefully I am going to tell you some things new. And the main focus here for me is that if you are going, hopefully you'll get the, you've done with the, with your conference interview, or for your first type of interview, either like, for example, Zoom, online, and then you come into the job interview at the campus, and you're going to know what you should do and what you should not do, maybe. Generally, the job interview that day is going to be like including a job talk, lunches or dinners with the faculties or with the maybe staff and PhD students, to just get to know you over the lunches or dinners or some unofficial talk. The office hours that you have with faculty one-to-one or multi-to-one, I had both of them. And the meeting with graduate students and your presentation, that may be other than job talk, that would be, for example, for your teaching, you want to talk or have a presentation. So what I'm going to talk is that, okay, when you are doing a job talk, what you should present, how you should prepare, and what are some common pitfalls that you might have. So for what should I present, I always tell the students who ask me for that I know that you would like to talk about everything that you've done, and it makes you very interesting into that project that you've done, or the whole, for example, projects that you've done for your PhD, but you don't have that much time. So it's better to just select one paper or one topic, and or if it's like a chapter, one chapter of your book, and then try to present that. So don't present everything that you have, because it just make them bored instead of making them interested. You have enough time when you can, for example, present your result either in a publication, or other time offline with them. The structure of the presentation, I would say you need to start with a broad information of what exactly you've done that. I mean, in a very simple language that I would say, if you want to go to maybe a school, that students at a school, at high school, can understand it, because you are speaking with the people who are generally in college degree, but they are in maybe different fields, because you are not going to have job talk only for your colleague who are in your same field or the similar department. Everyone else would come to your job talk, so you need to have a broader version of what you have done. So, and then a little bit of your math or your methodology or your analysis, and then again expanded into a broad conclusion that, okay, what you have done with these complex and nice math, how it's going to affect, and what is the conclusion in a bigger perspective or in a bigger picture, like the managerial implication that we have in a paper that, for example, every manager or every CEO can read it and then say, okay, I know what you mean, okay, or at least I know what I should tell my staff to do according to these information. So not to just focus very much into your detail, that's my perspective, because the detail is not. And the other thing is that the job talk is for you to show your overall work, not to show how you are very good at complexity of the math. The complexity of the math will be determined according to the publication that you have. So I would say that's I think a good presentation, and this style or this structure, you can use it for specifically for the conference presentation as well. I know that the conference presentation, you can use more of the evidence, because that's the place for showing and looking into some feedback for them. But I would say for job talk, very minimal part of that. So before the talk, so I would say, okay, it's better to know your audience, as exactly we have from Dr. Ariana, I think. Sorry if I just be so small. Then according to the information that you have, just don't use those complicated slides that's showing very mix of complex math that doesn't really show something. It's showing your complexity of the work, but nothing else. Always prepare some supplementary slides for extra question that you might receive, and make it nice and colorful, and practice it in front of yourself, practice in front of your friend, your family, if you can, and try to ask them for the feedback and revise it till the point that you say, okay, that's ready for your interview. And one way is that you can just practice it. You can like record it and then watch it to see how you are doing. That's a good thing that we have now, and you can practice it easily. Then during the talk, while you consider everything before the talk and you structure your talk in that way, so it's okay if sometimes you made a mistake. It don't rattle. It's completely normal for everyone, even for, I would say, maybe the biggest speakers. Sometimes they have some difficulty, so don't be afraid. Don't just be sad and forget because um, it may help, it may not help. It just avoid you of having something that you wanted to say or telling something. So don't use some words too many times, specifically if it's acronym. Just try to use it for a few times and try to move, try to see the people, talk to them, not just look at the floor. Discuss and talk in very simple language. Talk about your future, the questions that they might have, and answer their question in the best way that you can. And don't talk fast. I'm not sure if I'm talking fast or not, but I suggest not to talk fast. Then there might be some typical questions during your interview that, okay, what you've done, how it's going to answer your questions that you have for your interview. I mean, how you are connecting your conclusion with your introduction. Why you use this method? So what? I mean, what you find, how it's going to help suppliers or supply chain or policymaker, what? I mean, you need to just know a bigger perspective of your work. And some question like, okay, why you didn't use this theory or this method or something like that. Then for office hours and with one-to-one or multi-to-one conversation with the faculty. So try to say something that show the value of your work. Don't be shy. Prepare to talk about your the points of your dissertation that is very important and you could publish very well about that. Talk about your future research plans to see that how you can find a way in order to make some collaboration in future. And also ask about your responsibility in future. We are not, as the other speaker said, we are not there to just be asked, but we are there to also ask the question because we are in the job market and we are going to get the best of them. And prepare questions as much as you know the colleagues, and you can have the questions for them. So you'll get more time to breathe and to just listen instead of talking. And that's a good way to just have a little bit of relaxation during the faculty one-to-one meeting. The question that you can ask, or you might be able to ask specifically during campus visit, is that, okay, you ask about the research funding. What are your opportunities for getting the funding for your research? Do you have any assistance? Can you get any assistance for your research? What is the typical teaching load? The living area around, what would the expenses, where, for example, where you can get the house, something like that. These questions shows not only your interest into getting that job, but it shows that you are exactly preparing to get that job and start as a faculty. So it's not only the question per se, it's just a question that shows you how you are interested in these in this position. And then present yourself as a professional with good looking clothes and very neat. And last but not least, try to have fun. I know it's a very, very hard time, but it will be fine. And everyone had the same situation. So try not to be hard on yourself, because everything is going to be an adventure. and we will use all of our experience in somehow in one way or in one time. And that is my presentation. Let me stop the share. I think I have a few questions, yeah? Oh, okay, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sawberry. Yeah, there are some insights from Dr. Besik and Dr. Arora added in the chat box.
Yeah, I'm not talking about, okay, the details of the models, I would say you can prepare it as a supplementary slides, and you can keep it for if they would like to see that. Thank you. And yeah, and I agree with that. Yeah, it should be cool. And you should have everything in a colorful things and try to be attractive. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Sawberry, for your advice and the nice slides. And the last panelist is Dr. Gopalappa. Let's hear from her.
Thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. And the good thing about going last is everyone's already done your work for you. And, you know, especially when you have such wonderful panelists, have very little work for me. You know, I think, you know, I do want to stress on all that the previous panelists said, and, you know, they're extremely important points. And I think each of them covered from very different aspects of it. You know, those are extremely important and useful. So what I'm going to sort of, you know, concentrate in is, you know, like Professor Arora said, preparing for a career in academic or industry sort of starts from day one, you know, day one of entering your PhD program. Um, and the approach to that, you know, how do you prepare? The approach to preparing for an academic career, I think, is something that probably is different for each of us. So what I'm sort of going to concentrate in is an approach that worked for me and something that I've been consistently using for a long time now. And this is, again, you know, something that's changed over time. You know, it is a trial and error. You have to evaluate what works for you, what doesn't work for you. But to me, I think, you know, it sort of falls into this broad category. Um, so I typically tend to categorize my tasks, my day-to-day activities into three categories. One, I would say, is the actionable items. The second is the creative items, the creative tasks. And the third are the visionary items, or the visionary tasks. You know, so just to give you an example, if you are a first or second year student, your actionable items are probably the research work that your advisor is guiding you through, right? So doing those specific coding or, you know, writing specific literature reviews, right? So those are the actionable tasks we can just check off and say, okay, you've worked on that. The second is the creative tasks. So those could be, again, if you're a first or second year student, you might have this challenging formulation to think about, or either on your research or your assignment, you have a challenging task to think about, and that needs, you know, more creative thought process, right? So these are the creative ideas. And visionary is the one which is, you know, really broad. Yeah, and as a first or second year, you're probably, at least for me at that point, you know, I wasn't really sure what I want to do. Do I want to go to academia, or do I want to, you know, go to an industry? Or it could also be, you know, what would be your second and third topic for your dissertation, right? So this is a space I would say is pretty scattered. There are a lot of thoughts going in this space, in this kind of activity. Um, you know, so you can also think about these three categories of tasks. as also 3 phases for achieving any goal. So all of your ideas sort of start off in this visionary phase. Now I'm just saying it is visionary, but it's pretty much you can think about all the any ideas that sort of pop up in your mind. And all of these ideas, it's not necessary that all of them would eventually lead to those actionable items, would achieve your goals. But I think it's really necessary to have the space where you're able to brainstorm with yourself, or and these are things that might initiate as conversations with others, reading the news, just things that you try to think about from a day-to-day basis, and sort of having those ideas, even if it is not really well developed. I think it's necessary for those to lead into something that
I think Dr. Gopalappa's internet is a bit probably
I
down.
think she froze. Do you want a motion to her? Can't hear. We can't hear you.
along those lines also thinking about what are the um, I think is the background,
No,
the
it was
noise, I
just
think.
we lost you for a moment and now you're back. So you
Oh,
can
okay,
continue.
I
Yeah.
see. Oh, okay, great, sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so so yeah, so I think during your second and third year, you're probably thinking, okay, now I sort of see that I want to be in academia. Research really interests me, but also teaching interests me. So now you want to start thinking about, okay, if you do go into the academic market, uh, what is that research that you're going to be working on? Because you're if you're in an academic setting, you have to establish yourself as an independent researcher. And for the ideas for the area of work that you would be working on, I think to start thinking about that should happen during your second or third year, really early on, even if it is very vague ideas for what interests you, what do you want to do. But I think it's necessary to initiate that thought process early on. um, and when you're getting into your final year, I think all these ideas that just started off in that visionary phase are now sort of materializing into your research statements, your teaching statements. You sort of have a more concrete idea for what is that research topic that you would want to be doing. Okay. And I think engineering schools sort of work a little differently compared to management schools. So we'll also probably talk about the engineering schools. So if you're in faculty in engineering, you typically write research proposals to get funding for your research work. And I think so what is that research proposal that you would be writing about? What would you be what topics do you see yourself working on for the next 5 or 10 years once you start your academic position? And I think those ideas should really initiate early on in your first, second, third year, but they would start to materialize during your final year. So I think and I think just going back to the 3 categories of tasks, I think I tend to use that for not just um, uh, as a phase, as a process for identifying the path towards achieving my goals, but also it is a way to help me organize my thoughts. It's a way to help me manage my time, because every day, you want to feel like you accomplished something, right? So having those actionable items, something that you can check off and say, okay, I've done this. But also you need to have that creative, activities. So if you're working on your dissertation topic, being able to think about these challenging questions, how would you go about formulating a problem? And I think that's where uh, it's important to, I think that's where your research proposals would also initiate. So when you are interviewing for an academic job, um, you know, you would have to have thought about how are you going to get funding for your research proposals. What does the NSF fund, or what does NIH fund, or whatever areas fund your research work, and what would be those research topics that are likely to get funded. And I think all the other panelists mentioned that you need to, just you need to be able to uh, converse with someone about your research in very simple terms. And that also applies to being able to communicate these really transformative ideas, innovative ideas in simple language. So, you will be evaluated on your ability to do research if you're in an academic setting. But right, so saying that in simple terms does not mean that it's not transformative, right? So it's the ability to explain the intellectual merit, like, what NSF uses is the term is intellectual merit. NIH uses the innovation, the novelty, right? Being able to, the novelty, the transformative nature. If you're in an engineering, what is the transformative idea that would move the field of engineering, but apply to something that makes an impact in the society, right? So the broader impact and the intellectual merit, or the novelty of it. So I think saying that in simple terms, but still being able to show that it is transformative, and those are the ideas that will allow you to get the funding from your funding agencies to do the research for over the next 5 years. Right, so I think showing the ability to be able to set up your independent line of research. Independent doesn't mean that you're not collaborating with others. Is really right. You're just coming up with these ideas that will help you build those collaborations and set up your own research lab. Um, yeah, so I think that probably covered the first and the second question. I would say, apart from what everyone else has said. So I think I will keep it at that. And I really like what Professor Arora said about the third one. Don't worry about there's always going to be something that's happening in the environment that is not in our control. I think what you I think just do what you're already doing best. And I think, research is something, I think the COVID is really just showing us uh, how ill prepared we are for a pandemic, though, this is something that the science for this is something that's been ongoing for a really long time. So to me, this is just really an eye opener for the need for research, the research gap. So I think it's a uh, very useful to think about, irrespective of what area you are in. I think the essence of research, I think, is something that is extremely important. So I think as long as you're just doing what you need to be doing, I think things would fall in place. Yeah, so I think I'm going to stop there.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Gopalappa. Very great insights. And I think we have a few minutes for questions. We already have one question from Alisa, who is asking from like all the panelists who can answer that.
Just add a general thing, which may not be directly to this answer, but I think nowadays we all need to have presence on online presence. And apart from your school's profile page for you, you can create a website using Google Sites. It's very easy. They provide you easy ways to create. And what I think is that you should have some part in that website dedicated to, you know, cool ideas about like you're summarizing your work or takeaway from your work or your thoughts on things that relate with your work. And that gives you an opportunity to keep posting things on LinkedIn rather than say, hey, see my website. You can say that these are my inputs on this thing or that thing. So in that way, you will have a nice reason to share yourself. So I think that's an important way to be visible. That's important. Visibility is important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think it's absolutely, I think the question was, do you just directly say that you're on the market? Yes, absolutely. I think, that's absolutely, a great way to let your networks know.
Yeah, I saw some people also on Twitter. They, say that I'm on the job market, and they sometimes put in their bios, like on Twitter, that they are in the in the job market. I think that also might help, and also LinkedIn. And I think some conferences, they also publish a list of candidates in the job market, like POMS. I remember putting my name for the list.
Another possibility might be taking part in doctoral colloquia or consortia. Various societies do that, and then you can network even virtually then. Like Informs has doctoral colloquium, POMS has DSI, and I think those are really helpful as well. And also reach out. I know our former student Harris, he got a job because he heard someone was having a postdoc or he liked someone's papers. Just reach out, don't be shy at this time. I think that's also important. Send a nice message to a faculty member, even say, do you have a postdoc? Might you have openings? I'm on the job market. Because believe me, faculty are always looking for, good postdocs or good faculty to join their.
Okay, I think now Professor Nager, and this connection is not stable.
I'm done. I spoke.
Okay.
You didn't hear me? Oh, well, that's okay.
No, just the last part. Thank you. Okay. Is there any other questions? I think we had like 4 great panelists who covered almost everything. So there are probably not much questions. And yeah, and I want to thank all the panelists, and I want to wish everyone who's going to be in the job market in the near future success. And I hope you all enjoyed. And as Professor Nagarni mentioned at the beginning, we are going to have our next event on March 5 from Dr. Zende from Amazon. Please follow us on our social media or email us. We can add you on our email list so you can get informed. And that's it, if no one has any other thing to add.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Excellent advice and great to see everyone. Keep up the great work.
Good, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.